I've divided the talk into 3 sections. Apologies everyone for this. Getting into the state government, like how you would apply to work for the state government. And secondly, what to look for when applying for jobs for the Queensland government, and then staying in government, like how you might operate within that space of government if you do want to stay. And I do tie in some helpful tips along the way with that. So to start with getting into government, can I just confirm everyone can hear me?
Yeah,
yeah,
we can hear you.
Yes, yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. There's 2 key ways to apply for the state government, primarily through the Smart Jobs website, and then there's also the graduate program. There used to be a third option, which was called the internal expression of interests approach. Unfortunately, due to the COVID pandemic, Queensland government has entered into what they call a debts and savings plan, which means that recruitment for internally recruited jobs are now only open for existing Queensland government employees. So really the only 2 options for external people who are wanting to apply for the Queensland government is through the Smart Jobs and through this graduate program, which I'll talk a little bit about now. For the Smart Jobs website, most of you probably know it, maybe have gone to that website and scrolled through to look at some jobs. I suppose it's the key way for Queensland government to externally recruit for those who are entering or looking to look for to work for the Queensland government. My tip would be to apply for many jobs as you can to enable yourself to get in that, I suppose, your foot in the door. Due to the increasing competitiveness of the job market at the moment, it's now more common for individuals to apply for more, as much as they can. And I'll speak a little bit later about sort of jobs that you might be looking for in that. The second way is the graduate program. Primarily, this used to be really for undergraduates to hope to enter the Queensland government. Unfortunately, given the current job market, there's now actually more postgraduates who are now using the graduate program to enter the Queensland government. In our department, we have what we call the Policy Futures Graduate Program. It's a 2-year program, and it gives you an opportunity to rotate to approximately 3 different agencies to give you, I suppose, that diverse policy experience across the Queensland government departments. And they do give you, there is some really great perks in that graduate program. Like they do give you great opportunities to training to ensure you have those skills, you know, for Queensland government, and they give you a mentor along the way to help you. And they also have access to guest speakers, panel discussions, and networking opportunities as graduates. And that mentor will help you throughout that period to guide you and to help, and also possibly at the end of it, give you a job at the end of that graduate program. I would say from talking from those who've gone through that graduate program, they actually do end up with, or most graduates do end up with permanent job opportunities after that graduate stint. And, you know, depending on your experience and I suppose your background to when you enter that program, you can also jump higher up the ladder to some other graduates who enter that as an undergrad. So, you know, just because you enter the graduate, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to work your way from the bottom up. It actually can mean that you get your foot in the door and you can actually jump a few levels to get, you know, where, as that's reflective of your skills and experience at that time. And graduates who do go through that graduate program usually have a really positive and really great reputation. So everyone actually really looks forward to having a graduate in that program. And you do meet a lot of people along that way because you do go through that rotation as well. So that's applying, that's through Smart Jobs and the graduate program. And then I suppose, you know, that process of applying, so this is the second part of the talk, is, you know, what might you look for when you're actually applying for the Queensland government? So when looking at the Smart Jobs, website, you know, you're looking at jobs, you might be a little bit confused about what they read, but if you're looking at that, look for the classification of that job. That's kind of the key thing to look at. And this starts with maybe a number of letters and then a number. Sometimes the letters begin with an AO or a PO or something, and then they have a letter afterwards. AO jobs are generally administrative, general expertise. There's no set qualifications that are required for those jobs, but depending on the job, skills can be quite specific. They are policy specific jobs. They can range from executive as well. And I would say about 80% of Queensland government jobs are sort of administrative officer sort of specific jobs. And there are some what they call PO jobs, which are professional specific, and that's where a specific expertise is required for that job, such as maybe if you're a lawyer and there's a legal officer job, then that's a PO job, and you will require a law degree to apply for that job. The numbers in the jobs then require that indicates the level of responsibility for that job. From my experience in Queensland government, most people who come from government start from the bottom, which is like a 2, and work their way up. But as a PhD candidate, I would recommend that you at least go for a 5 as a start and work your way up, because I believe your skills and experience really reflect from that. So I wouldn't recommend you to go any lower than that, but that's something that is something that you can jump off and not actually go from the bottom and work your way up, as most Queensland government employees do. A tip that I would give is don't limit yourself when you are applying for jobs, especially when it comes to temporary or permanent jobs as well. So in Queensland government, we have temporary jobs and permanent jobs. Permanent jobs are much more competitive. So you normally get far more experienced public servants who are applying for permanent jobs at lower levels than maybe what they're acting at. So my advice, and this is how I also entered into the Queensland government, is apply for a temporary job as a start, and then that could enable you to build your experience, and then more likely to then enable yourself to apply for a permanent job at a later stage. When applying for a job, they usually have a job profile. You look for the heading. I mean, this is what I would usually do. You look for the heading that says how you will be assessed for this role, which includes the key criteria for what they need from someone to do that job. This criteria should be addressed in your 2-page statement that is submitted along with your CV. So when developing, this is my tip, so when developing your 2-page statement about yourself, structure it around those criteria that they're asking for. It's a paragraph for each bullet point with an example demonstrating what you've done to meet and actually have met that criteria. Queensland government are notorious for simplicity, so forget about the niceties and the background about you and what you've done. All that they're interested in is looking at meeting that criteria and the examples of you meeting that criteria. It is not about writing the best written essay about why you're destined for this role or why, you know, for what you've done in the past, but it's actually a boring review of your experience against that set criteria. That's basically all it is. Like, there's no introductions, just go straight to it. Like how I would just do headings for each criteria and then each paragraph against that criteria. That's all I would do for those statements, for that 2-page statement. Because what they would say is that it's a waste of space if you're doing a lot of that introduction stuff. Just forget about it. I mean, finally, so my tips for how you would stay in government. It's highly likely that you'll start with a temporary position. And a good thing is to make a good example of yourself, which will open then for more opportunities such as permanent jobs. You know, I have a few tips. I mean, first of all is listen to the different types of expertise that is actually in the Queensland government. You might be an expert in your field and what you've obtained through your PhD. You've got theories, you've got methods, all that wonderful jazz that comes through the PhD journey. And it might seem counterintuitive, but this is not the information, I suppose, that the Queensland government looks for from a new recruit. it's an opportunity to learn from those more senior public servants, the practicalities of doing things efficiently and quickly. That's what is kind of looked at positively in the Queensland government, and are the skills that we learn from our PhD, you know, the writing skills, the time management, ability to read and just digest large and vast amounts of information quickly. This is all really, really useful stuff, you know, for the Queensland government. So that use of those more general skills will really come into fruition and really be deemed positive for the public service. And as a new staff member, you know, they'll see and notice that you have those skills and you will be able to grow. And then once you sort of embed yourself and show that you're willing and keen to learn, that's when you can really start using your knowledge and the expertise that you've gained through the PhD, and they will be able to learn from that and actually influence and be able to make a difference, I suppose, in the policy space. And there'll be more opportunities for you to provide and share that expertise and influence policy experience once you actually, I suppose, demonstrate that you are capable in a sense. The other tip that I would say is keep networking. If you've got into Queensland government, keep networking outside of your team, particularly if you've only got a temporary job. The thing is, like, there are always those internally recruited jobs that I've mentioned before, and they will more than likely be in a team that's next door to you or across the floor. So it's always great to make yourself known to teams across the floor, and be able to then obtain those temporary positions in other teams that you'll be able to get an additional experience with. And then you can rely on those networking skills at some point down the line when reapplying for jobs. So in that sense, I think we're out of time, by the way, so I'll finish with that.